Welcome to the first bonus episode of Season 4 of the Process Automation Podcast from ABB. I'm Fran Scott, and in these bonus episodes, we welcome back a previous guest of the podcast to interrogate them that little bit further about a topic that we didn't have enough time to cover in the main episode. In our last episode, we talked about the energy transition workforce and the ways in which the industries are changing as more and more Gen Z are starting work. However, one topic we didn't have time to cover is how these heavy industries still have to nurture their existing workforce to ensure that they're not left behind as technology races ahead. So I am thrilled that we are joined again by April Whitson, Global Head of HR at ABB Process Industries, who is able to shed some light on the challenges of providing for the existing workforce while still bringing in those younger employees.
It's a big challenge today, for sure. And the main thing we can do is reskill. Right? We need to take the time. We as an organization need to make sure that we're investing time, allowing for them to be reskilled, that we are building good programs, either internal programs or using agencies outside of ABB to help us with that reskilling, whatever the right situation is, but we need to invest in it. And this is not always easy because we tend to be so busy all of the time. Everyone is very busy. Even these employees that need the reskilling don't always see that they need to invest the time into the reskilling because they're so busy doing the day in and day out tasks. But the ones who get left behind will be the ones that don't necessarily put the time into the reskilling, right? And as a company, we have to put the time in. Our employees will have to put the time in as well in order to ensure that we really take care of them. They're important. You know, I often say that we can't lose as many as is predicted to lose in the business because with them goes such an incredible amount of knowledge. And so we just can't afford that. And so how do we continue to do that? We have to give them the training that's needed and the time. We have to give them the time.
Absolutely. And just thinking about the jobs that I've had and the people that I've worked with that are nearing retirement age and when they've had to retire, the big gaping hole that they've left in the institution and how that's really been felt and has ricocheted down the levels. So why is it so important to ensure that workers of all ages are reskilled in this way? Especially if they are, nearing retirement. Maybe they just want to see out those days, but maybe not.
There's a lot of recent articles out right now around the age of retirement is actually increasing, right? And so the other thing that we have to acknowledge and recognize is that the traditional ages are just that. They're traditional, just like everything else. And we're not going to operate in a traditional manner anymore. We have to transform. It's not as uncommon to see somebody work until they're 70 in some countries. And, traditionally you would not have seen that. And so how do we make sure that those people feel like they have a place? We have to give them our attention. We have to focus on making them feel valued, right? Making them feel like they still have a place here. And this is the number one responsibility of the leader, right? I am a big believer. I can definitely get on a soapbox being an HR professional. I can get on a soapbox and say it is not about HR putting a program in place. It is about a leader taking the time to know every single person on their team and understanding what motivates them, how they feel seen, what do they give, what do they contribute, and what more do they want to contribute, right? And that is individualized. There's some employees that maybe are just approaching that time where it's like, I just want to ride this out. I only have a couple of years and I just want to ride this out. But a good leader is able to help them see the value they can bring to the organization if they will just raise their bar just a little bit, right? It's a 1% improvement. Let's just like, what can we do? And doing that on an individual basis with each employee is where the power is.
And so, how does technology come into all of this? Because, yes, there are those personal skills, the pastoral care, let's call it, in terms of when you are working with someone, making sure they're okay and making sure their needs and their wants are met. But at the end of the day, making sure you can do the job that needs to be done, that needs to happen as well. So as technology changes, how should companies go about ensuring that the needs of the people are met as well as the needs of the company?
I think a lot of it just comes down to understanding what does that technology, what do the skills look like for the future, which is a little bit tricky because I mean, I'm not sure 3 years ago if we would have been able to say we should be reskilling our employees to understand AI, right? AI just kind of came upon. I mean, there's parts of the world that understood it a little more than the rest of the world, but it really did just kind of come on pretty quickly that, hey, there's this thing, Chat GPT, have you ever heard of it, right? And then all of the sudden it was in everybody's vocabulary. So it's sometimes hard to predict what is it going to look like 2 years from now or 3 years from now. And so the companies that can do that better are definitely going to be the ones that advance a little bit faster. But we have to listen to our employees because that's another piece of information that they can bring to us, right? There's not a doubt in my mind that there are employees in our business that already see what the future looks like. If we just listen to them and we hear what they're thinking, and the younger generations coming in, giving them a voice to say, "Hey, have you guys thought about this?" I have a great story that I learned actually of how advanced we need to be when if I go back to the mining industry, for example, at a particular mine that I was visiting, one of the really exciting places that I got the opportunity to sit in was the control room where they were actually moving all of the material, all of the ore. So they're using the traditional heavy equipment to move. So they've blasted overnight and now they need to move all of the material out. And they're sitting in this room and they're using their joysticks and their little foot pedals and they look like they're playing video games, right, on monitors in front of them, but they're actually moving the material to a conveyor system that's going to move it up to the surface. And I was talking with this individual who I made an assumption that this employee had been there for a while, that was a little more senior in age compared to the rest of the group. And I purposely went over and was talking to him about how has this transition been? How long have you been here? Oh, I've been working here for, I think he said 25 years, something like that, quite a long time. And I said, how's this transition been? And he said, well, I mean, clearly I used to run the equipment out there, right? And now I'm moving the material in here. And he said, I if the company hadn't allowed me the opportunity to learn and to train on this type of thing, I never would have done it. I'm not a gamer. I don't know how to use the joysticks like this, or I don't know how to do these things, right? And so he was saying that like he voiced that he had an interest in learning how the future was going to be run, and he was given the opportunity to train. So once again, if we just will listen very intently to our employees about what does the future bring, and if we can stay on top of what that future looks like, we can bring these two things together, right?
Absolutely. Because I bet it can be quite frustrating for the workforce that's been in there for decades, because there is sometimes such a focus on recruiting new talent with these changes. But this workforce that's already been there, the experience they've got and the knowledge they've got is incredible. So it's really nice to know that this upskilling is happening, not only for those people, but also for the industry, because there is this massive skill shortage. And so to be able to just train people in that tiny little change, here's how you operate this now, it just makes total sense.
I think the other thing too that I really I really like, and I kind of hit on mentorship earlier, but I do think also mentorship is super powerful when it comes to the traditional sense of mentorship, but at ABB and a lot of other companies, we do the reverse mentoring. And this has been just an incredible learning for that generation that might be reaching a point where they're not really sure how much longer I'm going to work and do I really want to learn. And so I've had a number of those more senior career employees tell me that by just partnering with that early career person, they were inspired to want to learn. The perfect example is AI, right? There are definitely people in that senior level of the organization that were like, I don't want to learn this. I don't need to learn this. I just want to ride out my time. But those same people who have a reverse mentoring relationship with an early career, they've asked questions and then that person is teaching them, right? And so I think the more we get involved in that reverse mentoring type of thing, that can be very inspiring for a more senior person. I know that I get that way. I love talking with the early career people. I also have children who are Gen Z, right on the edge of Gen Z and millennials. So I am inspired by talking with my adult children now about the things they're learning and the views that they have on some of this technology. And so I think the more we can do that, more we can encourage, the better off we will be. But also it goes both ways. I also believe that leaders can do a lot more to encourage white papers, for example. So, I really believe that we don't capture that knowledge well enough in more formal ways. We just assume that it's being talked about in a team meeting or it's being talked about in one capacity or another, but we don't actually capture it, truly capture that knowledge. And so I like to encourage leaders to say to their teams, to their senior tracks, like write a white paper for me on this topic, or teach us in our next team meeting on this topic because you're an expert at it, and I really want you to teach the rest of the team. And so empowering them to feel like they're valued that way is also very important.
So, April, just to put you on the spot here, if you were to pick 3 things that you think are vital for retraining these employees and reskilling them in order for them to stay in the industries, what would you say those 3 things are?
Goodness, the 3 things that we need to focus on to keep them and to retain them in the organization. I believe first and foremost, we need to align with purpose. So we need to understand what that means. Every person is different, so it's very individualized. So the more we understand what their purpose really is, what motivates them, what's driving them, what is at the core of why they want to get up every day. I often say that you should ask, the best question to ask your employees is, when you go to bed on Sunday night, do you look forward to Monday or do you dread it? Right? And that can be very telling. If a person is like, well, this week I wasn't feeling too good, then ask the question why, right? If that person's like, no, I actually was looking forward to Monday, then you're doing something right. But it's a very powerful question you can ask as a leader. So I think you have to figure out that purpose as well. I do also think that we as leaders need to encourage curiosity a little bit more, because I do think that if we will instill as an organization this mindset of curiosity, then our employees will also follow along on the journey of curiosity. But we have to lead first. So not everyone is completely curious. I'm a very curious person. I read all the time. I love to learn new things, but not everyone is like that. And so I think that that's a trait that leaders can also, to keep people engaged in the organization and keep them wanting to be a part of what we are about at ABB. You need to inspire that curiosity in them so that they want to transform, so that they want to move into the future with new reskilling and things like that. And then I think the third thing that I would say really is just giving again, growth opportunities, making sure that they understand that there are career paths. It doesn't always mean that we climb a ladder. I'm a big believer that just going from one ladder to another ladder is just as powerful in your career. It's not always about going up a ladder. And so if we can encourage employees and have good conversations with them about what that looks like to really just learn more about our business, have a broader business acumen so that they bring bigger values to the organization, that is more powerful, because let's face it, there are only so many leadership positions the further up in the organization you climb. I mean, that's just the reality in any organization. And so finding that way for people to embrace their purpose, their curiosity by looking across the different elements of the business is just as powerful, but we don't always encourage that. So I think creating good career paths and development plans is crucial.
A huge thank you to our guest, April. Now, if you do want to hear more from her, go and listen to the previous episode of this podcast if you haven't already. And if you want to get involved and join us as an expert, then follow the link to ABB's website in the episode description, where you can send us your own domain of expertise. I'm Fran Scott, and the Process Automation Podcast is a Fresh Air production for ABB. Follow now for free wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.